A family portrait from the 1940s shows what might be the earliest use of a homemade selfie stick. The man on the right is holding a long pole with the camera at the end to get everyone in the shot. This portrait of Dolly Parton was taken in 1978, the year after her song Here You Come Again became a massive crossover hit. Her move from country to pop charts turned her into one of the biggest stars in the world. Frank Sinatra arrives by helicopter, a common way for him to travel between his home in Palm Springs and gigs in Vegas or LA. He famously had a helipad at his house to avoid dealing with traffic on the ground. A young woman walks down a New York City street in 1969, wearing the popular miniskirt and a chain belt. This fashion, a symbol of the 60s, would soon give way to the bell-bottoms and platform shoes of the 70s. A young man in a beret relaxes on the back of a 56 Chevy in New York City. The scene captures the tail end of the beatnik era, which flourished in neighborhoods like Greenwich Village. Inside a McDonald's in the 1980s, the menu board advertises a Big Mac for just over $1. The employee uniforms and cash register designs are a throwback to a time before touch screens and credit card readers. This photo from the late 1800s captures a group of samurai after their warrior class had been officially abolished. They carry the traditional swords, but their era was over due to the rapid modernization of Japan. These women were the unsung assembly line of the golden age of comics, manually collating every single page. Before digital printing, thousands of comics flowed through their hands hourly to get to newsstands on time. Before modern refrigeration, ice was harvested in massive blocks from frozen lakes during the winter. When machine-made artificial ice was introduced, some people claimed it was unhealthy because it lacked the natural impurities of lake ice. Jane Mansfield dances with a serviceman during a USO tour in 1961, a common sight for troops stationed abroad. These morale-boosting shows were a key part of her public image and a welcome distraction for the soldiers. Known as a pissoir, this ornate public urinal was a common fixture on the streets of Paris in the 1870s. They were an early attempt at public sanitation and were often covered with advertisements and official notices. Elvis Presley's famous 1970 meeting with Richard Nixon was the singer's own idea. He requested the meeting to volunteer his services in the war on drugs in exchange for a Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs badge. A woman walks through a modernizing Iran in the 1960s, more than a decade before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Her Western-style dress and hairstyle show a different side of the country's culture from that era. Actress Jane Mansfield visits with sailors aboard a U.S. Navy ship in 1957. These carefully managed photo ops were a huge boost for troop morale and a staple of Hollywood publicity tours during the Cold War. A cameraman in London films from a simple metal bucket suspended hundreds of feet above the street. His lack of a safety harness was the norm for the construction workers who built the city's skyline. The opening ceremony of the 1980 Moscow Olympics featured this massive human mosaic of Vladimir Lenin. For Americans, the Games are remembered for the massive U.S.-led boycott in protest of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Just months after walking on the moon, Apollo 11 astronaut Neil Armstrong enjoys a simple moment at home making pizza in 1969. The photo shows a humble side of a man who had just completed one of the greatest feats in human history. For decades, a diving horse was the main attraction at Atlantic City's Steel Pier. A rider would guide a horse to the edge of a 40-foot tower and plunge into a pool of water for a sold-out crowd. Actress Jane Mansfield stands next to a newly crowned Miss Hollywood in 1957. Mansfield's confident pose and screen siren presence easily steal the spotlight in this classic publicity photo. Tail fins and chrome dominate the parking lot of this West Covina, California supermarket in 1959. Car designs of the era were heavily influenced by the space race, featuring jet-like details and rocket-inspired taillights. Sean Connery takes a break from his James Bond persona to eat a bowl of spaghetti in 1971. He was reportedly getting back in shape to play 007 one last time in Diamonds Are Forever. Drag racing personality Jungle Pam party poses with driver Jungle Jim Lieberman in the 1970s. Her theatrical pre-race routines on the track made her as famous as any of the drivers in the sport. A young Mick Jagger is seen here in the early 1960s, before the Rolling Stones became a household name. This clean-cut look contrasts sharply with the rebellious rock and roll image he would later cultivate. Refrigerator cars line the tracks in a Chicago rail yard in 1942. As a major transportation hub, the city's railways were a critical artery for moving supplies and troops for the war effort. Aviator Charles Lindbergh is seen here accepting a medal from high-ranking Nazi official Hermann Göring in 1938. The incident badly damaged Lindbergh's reputation back home, leading to accusations that he sympathized with the German regime. A group of college kids in 1959 take part in the fad known as telephone booth stuffing. The goal was simple: to see how many people could cram themselves into a single phone booth. Before screen capture software existed, video game magazines in the early 80s used a camera on a tripod to get screenshots. They would literally take a photograph of the game playing on a monitor to use in their articles. A woman in the 1950s demonstrates a pair of floor scrubbing brushes attached to her shoes. The era was filled with quirky, labor-saving gadgets designed to modernize the American household. During the golden age of air travel, passengers on long-haul flights could book a sleeping berth like this one from the 1950s. These bunk beds allowed travelers to lie down and sleep comfortably on overnight journeys across the Atlantic. Actor Paul Newman attends the 1963 March on Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. He was one of several Hollywood figures, including Marlon Brando and Charlton Heston, who came to support the event. An African-American family from Florida rests on the side of the road in 1940, their car piled high with all their worldly possessions. They were part of the Great Migration, heading north to New Jersey in search of better work and a new life. A counter-protester during the Vietnam War era expresses his view on those burning their draft cards. The image captures the deep and bitter divisions within American society over the conflict. Bond girl Martine Beswick, who played Paula in Thunderball, takes a break during filming in the Bahamas in 1965. The local Gold Star beer she's holding was a common sight on the islands back then. In 1862, the city of Athens was a small town clustered around an undeveloped Lycabettus hill. Today, it's a sprawling, modern metropolis, with the famous peak illuminated at its heart. Red Sox catcher Carlton Fisk famously waves his 12th inning home run fair, winning Game 6 of the 1975 World Series. This dramatic moment is considered one of the greatest in baseball history. A well-dressed woman, likely a survivor from the Titanic, gives her autograph in April 1912. The scene shows the immediate celebrity status afforded to those who lived through the famous maritime disaster. The French airship Le Jaune floats past the Eiffel Tower in the early 1900s. In the dawn of aviation, these massive dirigibles were a common sight and a marvel of engineering. Diners at the Windows on the World restaurant enjoyed a stunning view of New York Harbor from the 107th floor of the World Trade Center. The iconic restaurant was a popular spot for special occasions throughout the 80s and 90s. An American inventor shows off his radio hat in 1949, a portable radio built into a pith helmet. The novelty item could pick up stations within a 20-mile radius, but ultimately failed to catch on with the public. A woman in Kuwait walks down the street balancing a sewing machine on her head in 1955. This was a common way to transport bulky items in an era before cars were widespread in the region. Cheryl Ladd, who joined Charlie's Angels in 1977, wears a t-shirt for Star Wars, which was released the same year. The photo captures a unique crossover of two of the biggest pop culture phenomena of the late 70s. A Tucker snowcat from the 1957 Trans-Antarctic expedition is caught precariously over a deep crevasse. The photo illustrates the constant danger faced by explorers in the uncharted, treacherous landscape. French star Brigitte Bardot walks barefoot with her then-husband Jacques Charrier in the late 1950s. The photographer in the background captures a candid moment from the life of one of Europe's most famous actresses. Italian actress Sophia Loren gives her younger sister, Maria, a kiss in 1955. Maria would later follow her famous older sister into acting under the stage name Maria Schiccolone. Seinfeld writer Larry David secretly pitched the controversial episode The Contest to NBC executives, fearing they would reject it. The network took a gamble, and the episode went on to win an Emmy and is often called the greatest in sitcom history. A group of Palestinian girls enjoys a rare snowfall in Jerusalem in 1921. For many residents of the region, seeing snow was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Walt Disney himself surveys the construction of Sleeping Beauty Castle in 1954, less than a year before the park's opening. The entire project transformed a 160-acre orange grove into Disneyland in just 365 days. Betty Brosmer, a top pin-up model of the 1950s, was famous for her incredibly small 18-inch waist. She later became an early advocate for women's fitness, co-founding Shape magazine with her husband, bodybuilder Joe Weider. University students in communist Romania attend a mandatory class on dialectical materialism in 1951. The portraits of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin loom over the classroom, a standard feature of life behind the Iron Curtain. This massive Vermont Railways plow was built to handle the state's brutal winters. Its giant, curved blade didn't just push snow, it was engineered to throw it far away from the tracks, to keep the lines clear.